Yes, yes, yes.
Great. So, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the March for Secure Code Expert Masterclass, which we are bringing to you in partnership with NASCOM Future Skills Prime, SkillsDA, and ISAC. Myself, Shikha Pathak. I'm the Awareness, Communications, and Policy Manager at SciSec. As you all know, that March for Secure Code is a month-long program on secure application coding and cybersecurity, which we are conducting in partnership with NASCOM Future Skills Prime and SkillsDA. So this course basically comprises of around 51 hours of learning with over 13 hours of theory and hands-on exercises as well. As a part of this course, we'll also have a grand challenge at the end with a lot of prizes in store for everyone. So today we have an amazing masterclass planned for you. We have experts joining us. But before I introduce the experts and the agenda for the masterclass, I want to announce to all the attendees that we will also be having a lab session post this masterclass, where the EdCast team will be doing a lab demo. So do not leave when the masterclass finishes. The agenda for the masterclass today includes topics like current tech stack in the future of application security and how to prepare for similar certifications. We are very fortunate to have with us Ashwath, who currently works as a principal consultant at Synopsys. He has previously worked as a security engineer at Microsoft Corp, and his interests are in cloud security, red teaming, application security, and threat modeling. We also have with us Karan Raheja. He's a security researcher working in Synopsys. He's an OSCP and CRTP certified security professional. He is interested in red teaming and wants to work primarily in offensive security. So, a very warm welcome to Ashwath and Karan. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm sure all the attendees will have a lot to gain from the session. So, over to you, Ashwath and Karan, for the presentation. The Q&A session, we can have it after the presentation. Thanks.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you very much, Shika. And thank you, Priya, for setting this up. Let me just share my screen. So let me know if you all can see my screen.
Yes.
Okay, super. Thank you. So first of all, warm welcome to everyone. Hope everybody is doing fine and your families are doing fine as well. So quick introductions. My name is Ashwath. I work as a principal consultant at Synopsys. My main interests are in cloud security, red teaming, and architecture reviews. So I started my career with a little bit of web pen testing. We'll talk more in depth there. And I've spoke at a few conferences. I also have with me Karan, who's a security consultant. So I helped hire Karan, and yeah, he's a lot of energy, and he's done quite a few certifications at such a short experience, right? So I thought I'll bring him on board to so that he could share some of his experiences, how he prepared for the certifications, and basically to get you all his view on what needs to be done, right? This was a little bit of a different presentation where I thought, I'll talk to you all a little bit about my own journey, how I got into security, and what are some of the things I did along the way, right? Sorry, somebody had a question.
Hello, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, how to join that meeting for 24th today? Meeting is going on, sir, now. March code, sir.
Hello. Shika, do you want to take the question or?
Hello. Yes.
Sir, how to join that meeting, sir?
Can you please type this in the chat window? I'll answer privately. Let's keep the session going, please. Basir, we can put all those who are not presenting. Hello.
Yeah. So can you hear me?
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, please. Requesting the person who has shared the question to please type it in the chat window. I will answer privately because let's keep the session going. Ashwit, you can continue.
Yeah, sure. Thank you.
Abbas sir, I request that all those who are not speaking, we can please keep them on mute so that the continuity of the session is not disrupted.
Yes,
Thank you.
mute only.
All right, I'll resume, right? So this was a little bit of a different session, so I wasn't really sure, what to present. So I thought I'll start with a little bit of my journey, some of the things I do. So I graduated from NIT Surathkal in 2007. I worked for a year in Bangalore. Then I went to do my master's in the US. I graduated from Texas A&M University, and my thesis was on cybersecurity, and it was more on the defense side. So it was an interesting thesis, and we did get quite a few citations. So then I joined Microsoft in the US itself, and I worked in Seattle out of the headquarters. So this is where my real journey into security started, right? I did quite a bit of web application pen testing, a lot of source code review. Then I got an opportunity to work on red teaming for the Windows Devices Group. So we did red teaming on the Windows Store. We looked at quite a bit of the Xbox Live and so on. Then I decided to move back to Bangalore to stay with family. That's when I joined Cigital, which got acquired by Synopsys, and this was in 2016. So here I've been mostly working on cloud security, threat modeling, and red teaming, right? So when did the cloud journey start? Maybe in 2016, 17, when one of our clients was moving to the cloud, that's where they said, hey, can you come take a look at this and help us out, right? So to me, initially, it was more like, hey, what is new in the cloud? It's the same as on-premise, it's the same virtual machines and so on. But I was so torn because there were so many new things to learn, and I learned quite a bit. Looking at the cloud, and it was a completely different journey, right? So that said, what is the big transformation and what does the future of applications look like, right?
Shika,
So
I
if you
think
see
let's
this
mute all the people who are not speaking. Na? It's like a lot of background.
Yeah, Priya, we have muted everyone except the speakers only.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you look at these two big circles, right, you might be thinking, okay, they're coming up with some new movie or something of that sort, right? There's Amazon and Netflix. So these are actually microservices. So what is a microservice? If you think of an e-commerce website like, say, Flipkart or Amazon, right? There is payments. So you create an account. Then, so this is the account's microservice. Then there is a catalog where all of the items are listed. You pick an item, then you add it to your cart. You add a payment instrument, which is like a credit card, and then you make an actual order, right? So there are like 5 or 6, on the top of my head, where you can think of all of these as microservices. Let's say, the big billion day sale is going to come up, or the great Amazon sale is going to come up, right? Amazon is going to see a lot of demand, and they're going to see like a lot of orders going through. So they really have to beef up the number of machines that's handling ordering. So to do all of this, they need to have separate microservices which handle each of these components, and each of them can talk to each other using APIs, and they have a standard API signature, right? So in the past, what used to happen was everything was a big software stack. To prepare for something like a big billion day, they had to bring down the whole system and bring up the whole system again. Whereas now it's all independent, like payments can keep updating on their own, ordering can keep updating on their own, accounts can keep updating on their own, right? So if you look at all of these dots, all of these are microservices, and it's so complex and it's become so massive that not one single person can understand like the whole ecosystem, right? So with this comes a lot of complexity where things are talking to each other. So that's where you might have heard of Dockers, containers, and Kubernetes and so on, right? So that is to make this life easy, deployment easy, and to handle the infrastructure, right? So that's kind of where the application landscape is going. And for security or for security professionals to be successful, you have to catch this wave and you have to ride this wave, right? So do understand where the world is going, and there are a few really good talks that I've shared on my Twitter handle, and do subscribe to some great newsletters. You keep getting a lot of content, keep reading through it. And again, uh, it's not possible to go in depth into all of the different topics. Like, try to understand the breadth, but really go in depth into one or two topics so that you understand the depth on what exactly a microservice is, what is Kubernetes, what is the YAML file, and so on, right? So the colleges might have covered a few things, but it's very important that you start practicing on your own and kind of go in depth, right? So just to give you another example of how microservices work. So if you think about Uber, right? Uber is, I'm sure most of you might have used Uber or Ola. So there is a user who can, pull up the Uber app or the Ola app, and they say there's a passenger management where it says, welcome, it says, for me, it says, welcome Ashwath, right? So where does that information stay? And it needs to pull all of my addresses, like my home address, my work address, and so on. Then also there's the passenger web UI if somebody wants to log in from the desktop. Then there is a driver management, payments, and so on, right? So these are all the different microservices, and all of these talk to each other using REST APIs, right? So if you think about the whole Kubernetes system, or if you look at Terraform, right, which is infrastructure as code, tries to super simplify all of these pieces to say, okay, you can go deploy all of these different pieces, and here is where you pick up the code for passenger management, and here is the latest version, and here is how much memory it needs, and so on, right? So all of this can be done using Kubernetes, the deployment, and you can deploy the whole infrastructure using infrastructure as code. So I might have mentioned quite a few acronyms here and there, but the key point is, this is where the application is going, and this is where we need to catch the trend, right? So any questions so far? I'll just check my chat window to see if there are any questions.
If there are any questions, participants can share them on the chat window, please.
Okay, none so far. So I'll go to the next slide. So this is what they call the Infosec Wheel, and this was shared by April Wright and Proxy Blue, right? So a lot of you might think, okay, cybersecurity is just, you need to do pen testing, you need to do, application security, you need to do CEH, you need to do OSCP, and so on, right? But no, there are very many fields where a lot of these things apply, right? So if you look at the red, this is where a lot of the offensive security is, the breakers of the system. So this is where, the web application pen testers and so on come into play. And the blue team is the defenders, right? So this is like the security analysts and the incident response folks who defend against such attacks. And the purple team works with both of these teams, and they constantly try to improve the security or the defensive mechanisms, right? So, this team acts as both the red team and the blue team, right? So this is what is called the purple team. So these three are new colors. So these three exist quite a bit in the industry. These three are new colors, but these three are always present, right? So if you look at the security automation with design and code, this is definitely present, and it's been there for years from my Microsoft journey, right? Back in 2010, this has always been there, where create a few components and a few libraries which can be used across multiple teams, right? So if you think about something like an accounts library or payments library, can be used by multiple different teams. And also there's the yellow team. So this is where the architecture review and the builders come into play, like building secure software. And also there is the concept of education. That's the orange team. So developers need to be trained on security, and this is usually handled by the third parties, where there is a third-party software, and the third-party software can help with the the whole education and training all of the developers and bringing them up to speed on the different kinds of attacks, right? From here, I'll pass it over to Karan, but I'll keep checking my chat window. If there are any questions, please send them our way. Okay, to you, Karan.
Yeah, just requesting unmute for Karan. Abbas said requesting unmute for Karan. Karan, you should be able to unmute yourself now. Please check. Uh, Karan?
Thank you,
Yeah.
Shikha. Yes, I'm able to unmute. So, hi everyone. I am Karan Raheja. I am working as a security consultant at Synopsys. My tenure has been close to 2 years now, and most of my work at Synopsys revolves around web application testing, network testing, and threat modeling. I've also been a part of a few red teaming engagements and few cloud security engagements. So, talking about my journey in information security, it began around second year, and so I was a mere information security enthusiast back then. And when I started, it was extremely hard, and because I was not aware of any of the concepts, and I jumped straight away into the labs, and also I just took a break from them, and I came back to the basics. So the basics, I cannot really stress upon how important basics are. Even when you are doing, hacking a network, you can't really deviate from the basics. They help you to grasp the things and the understandings. So uh, the first certification I encountered was CEH. It was in my pre-final year. That really gave me insights into how things in information security work and what I need to do. But after that, so it was a pure theoretical certification back then. Now they've added some practical modules and all. So back then it was a complete theoretical thing, and I had one interview after that. So that's my story. So I had one interview after that, and I was not able to perform the hands-on things that they gave me in that interview. So I was like quite a bit humiliated that time that I had a certification out of so many people. I had certification and I was not able to crack the interview. So certifications don't really fetch you the job. They never fetch you the. You just uh, get like okay. So you get the information, you get the HR door, but you don't get the job offer. They are your skills and the skill sets that matter at last. So the interviewers don't really give anything like serious about your certifications, but if you have the skills they require, you'll definitely get the job. So for the resources which I felt should be um, there for every beginner, which I was missing at my time. So some of the vulnerable labs at GitHub are really good. So you name a vulnerability, let's say XXC. So if you search XXC vulnerable labs GitHub, you automatically get redirected to the GitHub labs which are available for they're open source, like they're completely free. So you can download them and you can set up in your own environment. So they're a good platform to practice. You get the theory from internet, but you have to practice hands-on. So DBWA, WebGoat, JuiceShop, these are like internationally available environments. You get them on GitHub, you get the setup instructions. So you don't really have to do anything apart from setting them up. So you don't have to develop anything, you don't have to do anything. So one URL I mentioned here, bugbountytraining.com. It has been developed by Zed Sino, if you have heard that name. He's a very famous name in bug bounty community. He's a community worker as well. So he has developed this platform to for his own subscription things and all. And this also contains a number of vulnerabilities, and this keeps on updating. So that's a very good thing about it. And the Hacker 101 CTF. So you get private invites if you score in this CTF. So that's a really, multi-useful thing, because you get the HackerOne private invites, you get to improve your skill sets. What else do you want in this? You get to learn also. You get to learn. because GraphQL. So GraphQL, I didn't find any useful labs in GitHub because they were very specific scenarios and they were very straightforward scenarios. But HackerOne CTF has a really interesting scenario, so you should check that out. Pentester Lab is not a complete free environment, but it has some resources which are free. So this is if you have a student discount available, you can get it for a cheap price. But if you cannot afford it, the rest of the resources are more than enough to get you started into the web application testing. So, sir, next slide, please. Yes, for network testing. So network testing, let's talk about what is network. So network, everybody knows that organizations tend to set up networks. They set up Active Directory networks. They have Linux networks. So network compromise is not possible without you, like if you're not able to completely enumerate the environment, you will not be able to make the complete exploitation successful of the environment, because you have to get the set up and all the vulnerable labs. So you should have the hands-on skills on that. So these are the resources which can help you get the hands-on practice in networks. So Hack the Box is not for beginners, because I jumped in Hack the Box being a complete beginner, and it was a like complete nightmare for me, because I was completely like scared of the network things and all when I did this Hack the Box and all. So I switched to Vulnhub and Try Hack Me. These are some easy resources and they help you to get the skills. So Hack the Box, once you are familiar with the basics, you can surely jump into Hack the Box. They have some really great content. But to get started into Vulnhub and Try Hack Me, they're really good. Virtual hacking labs again is paid, but it is a good to practice. It's a cheap labs. They have some $40 subscription for 2 months, for 1 month, and they are like some good resource to practice. They are frequently recommended by security professionals for OSCP aspirants. So network pen testing, you can't perform a red teaming engagement, or you cannot be a proper penetration tester if you of a network. So we have to, get some basics for the networking as well. So set up the labs, these Vulnhub labs. Vulnhub labs were extremely, useful in my OSCP preparation. So I was not having skills to go for Hack the Box machines, but I had to do OSCP and all. So Vulnhub is a really good resource. You have to go some undergo some pain or something for setting the vulnerable network environment. But once you are done with that, there are plenty of guides on the internet for that to help you out. But you have to take the pain for setting them up. So next please. Bug bounty hunting. So
Karan, let us take a pause. Let's take a pause here, right? And
yes,
maybe we can take a few questions. So there was a question to say how to decide the tech stack based on scalability and security issues. Any thoughts? So it completely depends on what the end client is looking for, or what which kind of application you're looking to build, right? Because for different use cases there are different kind of applications or different kind of software that can be used. But the good news is, in most of the softwares or most of the technologies, security is kind of built in, and they do provide security measures, right? For example, I can give you an example about Kubernetes. Kubernetes is used by everybody today, but the first few versions of Kubernetes did not have authentication. So Kubernetes, if you think about it, it has two pieces. One is the user pane, and the other one is the control pane. So the control pane, think of it this way, where you log in and you can do the deployment into payments, you can make changes onto the accounts and so on, right? So this particular control pane did not have authentication in the first few versions. And if you look at what happened to Tesla, this was way back in 2016 or so, there was a hack because of which an attacker could log into the Kubernetes cluster of Tesla, and then they stole the S3 bucket credentials and they could dump some data. But what was worse was there was a persistent attack where the attackers had gotten and they were doing crypto mining on Tesla's infrastructure, right? So why is this bad? Somebody had gotten into Tesla's infrastructure and Tesla was paying money for, because some attacker was mining cryptocurrency on their infrastructure. And why is it bad? It's bad because, you have kind of given your whole infrastructure to other people, right? But the good news is Kubernetes now has like every security measure that you can think of, and it has like every way to kind of harden the system and make it really, really secure. So short answer is yes. With scalable software, you can also build a secure piece of software. Hope that answers your question. Then I've heard that setting up a personal. So there is a question saying, I've heard that setting up a personal lab environment really helps an individual demonstrate his or her skills to recruiters, right? Is that really important? I've been doing recruiting for a really long time, and I've been to quite a few colleges. So what do I look for, right? I don't look for, the breadth. I'm like, okay, tell me one area that you know well. So say somebody says cross-site scripting, right? I'm like, okay, tell me what cross-site scripting means. Like pretty much 80% or 90% of people can give me the answer. Then I'm like, okay, tell me, did you go exploit a cross-site scripting yourself? Then they'll give me an example. Then I'm like, okay, did you go beyond that? I would say usually they would say no, and some people would say yes. Then I'm like, okay, tell me more about it, right? So I want to see how much of a research you did yourself and what was kind of important, and how far could you go. So there is another question saying people are from different backgrounds, Karan. So can you stress on where really to start and kind of walk through your whole journey, right? So the reason why I brought Karan on board was I was blessed enough to hire Karan as well from UPS Dehradun. Though Karan was not in the computer science, our company was saying, okay, we'll hire only from computer science and IT. Though he was not in these branches, he brought a lot to the table, right? He had done his own CH certification. He had, he could answer what, some of the worst top 10 attacks were about and so on, right? So he had done a lot of research and he had put in like his own hard time. So those are some of the things I look for, and those are a lot of things that the recruiters look for as well. Nihal, short answer to your question is yes. It will really help if you have done set up a lab on your own, and if you have done some experimentation on your own. That really helps with recruiting. Karan, to you.
Yeah, Karan, I think you can continue.
Yeah, I think somebody needs to unmute him. Looks like he's muted again.
Who is it?
So let me see if I can do it.
Okay, Karan, you have co-host access. You can unmute yourself.
No, maybe he's joined in from a different. There are two pieces. Let me see if I can make him a co-host.
Oh, yes, I see Karan has joined from two accounts.
Yeah, I'm trying to unmute him.
Yeah, Karan, I think you can try now.
Thank you, Shikha. I'm able to unmute.
So Karan, there is a question. The question is, how does somebody start? Because there are people from different backgrounds. If you can maybe give them a few ideas on what are the different places they could start, that will be really helpful.
Sure, sir. So people from a different background, even I was from a different background. So studying OWASP top 10 really helps. And studying case studies, how the attacks happen, what are the potential impacts that they make, they are really helpful. And the DVWA, the vulnerable app which I told you about, it is almost about OWASP top 10, but it is not focused on OWASP top 10, but it covers most of the OWASP top 10. And the companies going into the recruitments, they mostly seek the knowledge of OWASP top 10 into the candidate. And if the candidate has a very solid knowledge of OWASP top 10, you are automatically in the team. And regarding the resources, you can get them on the internet. And SQL injection things, and cross-site scripting, cross-site request forgery, you have to study in detail about them, the attacks. And you just have to Google the attack name, and it will give you plenty of resources to study from there. You will encounter multiple scenarios, you will encounter multiple bypasses, and they'll be really helpful when you will be going for your interviews. And these all are covered in the web application testing, and you basically get the basics of all the web applications testing and all. So coming back onto the bug bounty hunting, yes, sorry for any further questions on that.
Again, please use the chat window, and you can ask us questions, because we've been through the same journey. So definitely ask us questions if you have any. Go ahead.
Okay. So,
So while Karan is figuring out his audio issues, there's also a question on cloud security, right? So there's a big uptick in the cloud, and a lot of people keep saying, okay, cloud security, how exactly do I get into it, and so on. OWASP has a good cloud security module as well. And if you look at some of the conferences and some of the material, even for cloud security, there's a lot of good content. I'll send a few links on chat. You can take a look at that. And how exactly do you look at cloud security, right? So to get into cloud security, the first piece is you will have to understand the cloud. And to understand the cloud, the most important thing is you need to practice yourself, right? You need to set up like a free AWS account, or you guys also have the student accounts, right? You can set up the student accounts and go through a course, right? There are enough courses where you can do the complete lift and shift, where you can deploy something on premise, and you can also move it to the cloud. And when you do that, you will learn a lot of lessons, right? Just completing a course on Udemy or your college will not get you anything unless you start practicing and you get your hands dirty. Getting your hands dirty is very, very important. And also, for people like me who's been in the security industry for about 10 plus years, the most important thing is to constantly keep learning and constantly keep reading. For example, a lot of people uh, think that, okay, once you join a job, it's the end of education. Um, no, that's absolutely wrong. That's when you'll actually get to see, okay, which area should I go focus on? What is happening in the industry? What are the conferences that are going on? And look at the conference talks. I still try to participate in CTFs. I want to do more, but I don't get enough time to go participate in CTFs, right? But yeah, that is, where you keep reading up on a daily basis, and you also look at, what are some of the things that are going on in the industry, and how can you help out there. So there's a question saying, okay, any resume tips for security engineer aspirants and the AppSec role, right? So the important thing is to, one, have a strong background, like Karan said. The fundamentals and the basics are very, very important. But once that is done, if you can demonstrate a few things on what exactly did you do with OWASP Top 10, did you go solve any labs, or if you've contributed to any open source, those are some of the things that are usually uh, very, very interesting. Demand for AppSec, there is, again, I'm going through the questions as in when I'm receiving them. So there's quite a bit of demand for security in the industry. Cybersecurity is a very, very hot skill to have right now. And let me go back to the wheel, right? The Infosec wheel. So if you look at this, it's not, a lot of people think that it's only the red piece that is the pen testing that has demand, but there's quite a bit of demand on the defense side as well. So this is where you need to understand what incident response looks like and what the analyst role looks like. There's quite a bit of demand in the analyst space as well. You need to understand the basics of networks, importance of application security, and what the OWASP top 10 attacks look like. And then it's really understanding how a tool works and how can you trigger alerts based on a particular tool, right? So that's kind of what is important. As you start growing and as you start maturing and doing a lot of threat models, you can get into the yellow zone, where this requires quite a bit of prior experience into architecture and doing a lot of threat modeling. But this area and this area are the two areas where you can start right away. And people who are good at coding can also take up security automation, because there's a lot of demand in this area as well, green area. Okay, back to you, Karan.
Okay. Sir, can we get back to the bug bounties? Thank you, sir. So bug bounty hunting, I have seen a lot of people getting into bug bounties and posting screenshots about the bounties. But that's really not cool, because money is not the only factor that you have for bug bounty. Money is a factor, but that should not be the only factor which you'll be doing for the bug bounties. Bug bounties are like, you undergo the web challenges, you have the infrastructure challenges, you get the network challenges. In Synac, you get the network challenges. But in the above three platforms mentioned, HackerOne, Bugcrowd, and Integrity, you are solely focused into web applications and mobile applications. So you have bug bounty platforms for that. And also the companies which have responsible disclosure policies, you should try to hunt on them. Once you have the basics, only then you should try, because not having the basics will not get you anywhere. You might be able to find an RC at a time, but in another time, when there will be a blind SQLi or a blind XXE, you'll be failing in that situation. So next slide, please. So yes, these are the 4 points that I have gathered in my 2 years of experience. The points, using Google is invaluable. There's a skill for that, and I actually felt that skill when I did some red teaming stuff and all, because the person with whom I did with red teaming, he just found the vulnerable CMS just with a search engine. He did not use any tool. He did not use anything. The application was already tested 3 times. This was again tested by one of our assessors, but he again found an RC, and that led us to the complete Active Directory compromise. So again, and then GitHub. So GitHub is very valuable in the vulnerable labs and all. You can get the tools, open source labs. Most of them are freely available on GitHub. Or if they are not available, then you can have the basic version of them, or you can try to develop your own if you have some basic coding skills. Tools are not to be trusted blindly because their outputs are most of the times false positives. So you have to revalidate them. Once you get the outputs, revalidate them manually or with your automation. Every pen test does not yield an RC or an critical. You have to accept the failures. We also have to accept the failures. We sometimes do not get anything in the environment, even after spending one complete week on the environment. So you have to embrace your failures. You have to learn from them, and you have to stick to the basics because they will be with you in your whole career. So without them, you'll just be a basic penetration tester. You'll never be a seasoned penetration tester. You'll not be able to say yourself a hacker. So next slide, please. This is a mind map which I came across in my OSCP journey. I found it 10 days before my OSCP exam, and I wasn't able to complete all of them. But now I feel that this is the most complete OSCP mind map that I ever found on Google. So if you follow this OSCP mind map, you will be ready for the exam for, I think around 60% preparations will be done inside this mind map. So next slide, please. Special thanks to all my mentors, both of them, Ashwath sir, Manish sir. They are, behind me, whatever I am now. Thank you, sir.
So there's one question which is asking, which do you think will be the most demand area in security in the upcoming years? I don't know, Sagar, to be 100% honest, but I think a lot of the web application testing and a lot of the current testing that we're doing will be replaced by tools and artificial intelligence. You can think about it. So I keep going back to the car terminology, right? So if you look at what Mercedes-Benz did in the S-Class maybe 3 years ago, is coming to all of the cars today, right? And, it's there in the Swift, it's there in pretty much every car in the market today. So, you can think about like the dashboard that is there or the console that is there in the car, right? And it's a similar trend that's going to continue. So if you look at what, so the Mercedes-Benz S-Class is probably like the Googles and the Netflix of the world, where they've gone to 100% automation, and the Netflix has this concept of chaos monkey, where they go and turn off a bunch of microservices and they see how it kind of behaves, right? So they have security monkey as well, where they go and randomly attack different microservices, right? So that's where the world is going. I don't think all of the enterprises can go there, but at least some of them will go there. And the big trend that's going to stay is cloud adoption and things like Kubernetes and the microservices, right? So in the previous masterclass, Akash also mentioned about microservices and journey to the cloud. So I think journey to the cloud is here to kind of stay. anything on IoT security and identity management. IoT security is definitely an upcoming field because especially in India we are seeing a big uptick on the electric vehicles and also IoTs. So that's definitely here to stay, and we can. I'm 100% sure that IoT security is also going to pick up, but IoT security heavily relies on the cloud as well because there's a cloud component to it, and that's where it pumps all of the data, right? So yeah, the cloud is also pretty important. And about identity management, so most of you might have heard of the recent SolarWinds attack, where it's a supply chain attack. Let's say I'm a company that's borrowing a piece of software and I'm running it in my infrastructure. And when I'm running it in my infrastructure, then I'm kind of assuming the risk, right, of this particular vendor or this particular piece of software. So one way to really strengthen or protect against such attacks is through identity. In cloud, it's called IAM. In on-prem, it's Active Directory, right? So that is going to be like the next, at least over the next year or two. That's my prediction that that's going to take off big time. So that's where the zero trust is coming into play, from both a network perspective and also the identity perspective. Okay, so there's another question. How does the mental model of thinking differ between a software developer and a hacker? So Karan, I'll let you take this question, right?
Sadiq, can you please repeat the question?
Question is, how does the mental mind map of thinking differ between a software developer and a hacker? Karan, were you able to get the question or no? Okay, maybe I can take a stab at this, right? So if you're trying to be a software developer, then you have a module in place, and the key piece is to kind of make sure that all of the test cases or all of the use cases for this particular application is being developed, and the whole concept here is to develop bug-free code. Whereas if you're an attacker, the first thing is to understand the application and also look for certain areas where, which could lead to like a backdoor or something of that sort. So if you look at most of the bug bounties, right, usually in the main website, if you look at Amazon or Flipkart or whatever the main website is, usually these would have been tested like thousands of times, and these will usually not have any issues. But usually like a backdoor application where merchants use, that might usually have some kind of an issue. So with an attacker, you look for all possible places to enter a building. Whereas if you're a developer, you'll focus mostly on the main entrance. I think that makes sense. Does that make sense? There's a question, any roadmap to begin in cloud security? So for cloud security, I was building a mind map, and it's like 60% done. So maybe I'll put it up on my Twitter handle once it's done. I'll try to get it done within a week or so, and try to put it up on Twitter. So just if you can follow me on Twitter, I'll put it up on Twitter and LinkedIn. And also we have Manish on the line. He's somebody who's done like a lot of research in his free time, and he has like a lot of followers on Twitter as well. But the most important thing is he really likes helping people out, and he released a bunch of tools. So yeah, do follow him if possible on Twitter. Any other questions? So they're asking about a recording for the session.
Sure.
So
We'll make it available.
Shika,
Yeah.
okay, yeah. Masters in security or keep doing research and job in security, right? So for me, it was a different journey, and 2010 is different from 2021. 2010 was when I did my master's or completed my master's, right? Um, so back then, security was not mainstream. And let's say for every, maybe 200 developers, there's one or two security people, right? But now the industry standard is from 3 to 5% of their team is security folks, because the number of attacks have increased and the threat landscape has also increased, right? So if you look at the number of things moving to the cloud and the number of things moving to like SaaS or PaaS software, that's where the big change is. And for folks who want to learn more about cloud or to see, what exactly cloud security is about, I've done quite a few talks on cloud security, so you might want to go take a look at it. So there is a talk on Bright Talk that's available.
Are there any other questions? Participants can share it on the chat window before any final questions that we can take up before we wrap the session.
So there's another question: is lab mandatory? So it's very important to have practical experience, because security is a very wide, large industry, and till you do things practically, you really won't understand what exactly does a server-side request forgery mean, or what exactly does a CSRF mean. And these will come in really, really handy even when there are newer attacks that you're trying to understand, right? So to understand complex attacks, you will really have to have some practical experience. So short answer, yes, a lot of practical experience is important. So there is a question asking you, is there going to be like a lab hands-on session? Shika, I think that.
Yes, Sarda, there is a lab hands-on demo session, which is for the March for Secure Code program. This will be after this session wraps up. Are there any other questions?
I see
Yes,
there's
please.
a question here which Nihal has asked. I'm not sure if that got answered, Ashwath. Is there a different methodology to apply when it comes to cloud penetration testing as compared to generalized testing?
Okay, I think I missed that. Yeah. So cloud penetration testing, there are two different pieces, right? So one is an application that's hosted on premise versus an application that's hosted in the cloud. So the very big difference is where exactly is it hosted on the cloud, right? Because it can be, if it's on premise, it's usually on a virtual machine that it's hosted on, and then this particular server is exposed to the internet. Whereas if you're hosting the same application on the cloud, same web application on the cloud, there are about 5 or 6 different ways that it can be hosted. So the very basic one is you put a VM and then you host it on the cloud. So that's the IaaS model. And this is where the instance metadata attack becomes very, very powerful with an SSRF. And there are other ways where you can use something like an application gateway and you can host this application. And there are also SaaS solutions that are provided by cloud providers, right? So the short answer is, so that is one piece where you're testing, you're doing a penetration test on a real application itself. And the second piece is doing more of an infrastructure audit, right? So all of these PaaS components and IaaS components and SaaS components have configurations. So have they been configured in a secured manner? So that's the big question that we would want to answer, right? So there are some open source tools which will run configuration checks against all of these different components. So that is something that can be done. But the big piece is really understanding how this whole puzzle is interconnected to each other and how all of the configurations come into play, right? And what kind of an impact will it have? So for example, this we saw in a real company where somebody had turned on a SSH rule by accident on the VPC, because of which all of the virtual machines, there were hundreds of virtual machines, all of them had port 22 or SSH access open to the internet. That was a big problem, right? So that's kind of, you know, the impact it can have. Any other questions?
Any other questions that the participants would like to ask? We'll just wait for a minute if there are any more questions, Ashwit.
Yeah, sure. There's a question from Faris. I wanted to know if lab is considered for course completion. I think that's a question for Shika. If you can just ask her the question, that'll be.
Yeah. Priya, can you please take that question? Lab for course completion?
No, it's not required. It's not required.
Yeah. Ashwat, there is another question by Nihal.
What's the mitigation for server-side request forgery, right? So this is a loaded question. So I'll give you like a short answer, Nihal. So the short answer is one, you would want to kind of avoid taking an input from the user and then making requests on the user's behalf from the server. In an ideal scenario, wherever it has to be done, there needs to be some kind of input validation and ensure that you know this the input is really validated and you know it does not have any special characters or anything of that sort. Any more questions?
Yeah, I don't think there are any more questions. Thank you so much, Ashwat and Karan, for joining us today, sharing your insights and knowledge with everyone. I'm sure the participants would have gained a lot from today's session. Thanks a lot. On behalf of SciSec, NASCOM Future Skills Prime, thanks for joining the webinar today.
Thank you very much, Shika. Thank you very much, Priya. It was a pleasure doing this. We really enjoyed the session. Thank you very much again.
Thanks a lot, Ashwat. Thanks, Karan.
Thank you so much, Ashwat. Thank you, Karan.
Thank you.